Welcome to Veteran Voices, SITREP, with your hosts, Tom and Chris Faust.
Welcome to another episode of Veteran Voices. In today's episode, we have a special guest, James Hubbard, and I will let you introduce him.
All right, real brief information before we let James explain it for himself. But James was an MP in the Army, and I met him actually through his Twitch stream. Popped in there one day years ago, and became friends through that. And then, just so on and so forth. Here we are many years later. But we can start with James. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the podcast people.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm James Hubbard. I met Chris through my Twitch stream. I did that shortly after I separated from the military. It was just a way for me to, trying to figure out what I wanted to do again in life. I got out of the Army and, used my VA benefits, my GI Bill to go to college. And I got, an associate's in computer programming. And then I got a bachelor's in project management and planning, more related to the IT field. But I was working with a company doing a large scale construction project management software system, for extremely large scale, like 20 to, starting like $20 million bids for construction all the way up to, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars for projects. So, worked in that for a few years and then moved back to Washington State to be closer to family. And like Chris said, I was an MP in the Army. I served for, 7.5, 8 years. I did 3 deployments, 2 to Afghanistan, once to Iraq. And then I was set to go on my 4th deployment. And I kind of was like, no, I think I'm done. I wanted to get out at that point in time, and just be able to start my civilian life. And I had too many close calls near the end. And, I think my angel looking out for me was working overtime. So it was time to, hang my boots up and find a different career path, which I did. And now here I am. I mean, that's kind of the long story short version of it, I guess.
Nice. Well, I know we're definitely glad to have you. I'm glad you agreed to humor me and joining my Dad and I's podcast.
No, I'm happy to be here. I think it's a good thing. There's a lot of, I know there's a million podcasts, but there's not so many towards the veterans, and getting the veteran voices out there. So I really like your guys's, your name and what you're doing, because I think it's important to get information out there to veterans that, may or may not know that they actually have benefits that can help them.
Yeah, and that's a very good segue into our topic here, which made me think of you, because I know you and I have had some discussions regarding the VA benefits. And that's one of the things that people either aren't very aware of, or they are aware of, but they just don't want to use them because of one reason or another. Like I had mentioned last week that I still haven't done it yet, but you'd asked me a question, am I a doctor? No. So, a few different things there as to, you should go and get looked at. But one other thing that I guess we'll just get to the first question is just can you share with us kind of your journey and how you became, really good in navigating the VA benefits, because I know that you do utilize them.
Yeah. So when I first got out of the military, I got out like on my own accord. I didn't get out medically retired or anything like that. I got out after my contract was done, like many other people have done. I should have been medically discharged. I should have. One of my doctors wanted me to do that, but I had already had plans, already had a place. And if I got medically discharged, I would have been stuck in the Army for another 8 months to a year, maybe longer, depending, to go through the medical evaluation process. And long story short, as I should have, because then I would have gotten even more benefits. I would have probably gotten medically discharged versus just, honorably discharged. But at that time I was really hard headed. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to get out on my own accord. I'm not in that severe amount of pain at this point. But those injuries, as they progressed further and further and further on, it just became disabling. And it's hard to admit that, hey, I have an issue. I have issues. And then when I got during the separation process, you go through, at my time, this was, I don't know, back in 2012, 2013. So 10 years ago, 11 years ago at this point, when I went out, we got evaluated by, the VA, and then you would go through an evaluation process, and then you can file a claim or whatever the case is. It's been a lot. It's been improved significantly. Seeing a lot of my friends getting out now, going through the process compared to when I got out. But it wasn't just one and one done. When I got out, I actually had to reach out to the VA. I had to go get, evaluation, and I didn't really have knowledge at all in this area. I reached out to, I think, DAV, and I got a rep to help me file a claim. But he was trying to claim every tiny thing that wasn't like things that to me wasn't claim worthy enough. And I felt he was trying to cheat the system, and that's not what I'm about. I don't want to tell anybody to cheat the system. You don't need to lie. You don't need to be deceitful, because that just hurts all the other veterans out there. It just, it's not good. It'll eventually, karma will come back and catch up to you. You'll eventually get caught. There's veterans that have done this, and, have been caught in the system and then have gone to jail. So you don't want to do that. But at the same point in time, I wish I had somebody to give me a heads up on all this. And anyway, long story short, the DAV guy, I didn't really go through that process. I just went and did it myself. I ended up getting, I think, evaluated at 30% to begin with. And at the time I thought it was fair, but I was going through other issues. I mean, I was going through VA primary care at the time, having issues with my back, my neck, my knees, the typical stuff that you see on, the Army these days, between having to carry, your combat load, your IOTV, your helmet, all your ammunition, weapon system, all that stuff. I mean, it's, it weighs a lot. And on constant deployments and stuff like that, it wore me down. So I went through that process. I was at 30% for a while. And then, I ran into another veteran that was like, hey, why, you're going through all these issues. Why aren't you higher rated? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't feel that I'm that disabled. And the same thing, what I told Acadian here is, he said, are you a doctor? And I was like, no, I'm not a doctor, And so the same thing I did, I'm sorry, to Chris here was say, are you a doctor? And you're not. So let the doctors determine what, you're supposed to be rated at. If you're having issues with it, get seen for it, and then file for compensation in that area if it's related to a military injury. And when you get out, you have a stack of medical records. I mean, my stack's probably this thick, of different various, deployment information, the pre-deployment stuff, the post-deployment checkups, all that stuff, but every time you went to sick halls in there and that kind of stuff. And the biggest thing is, if you're serving right now, if you sprain your ankle, you need to go get it looked at. I know they're probably going to give you ibuprofen and tell you to drink water and change your socks. And, that's what they always told us back in the day, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But go get it looked at, because it'll be in your medical record. And then 5-10 years down the road, if you develop an ankle, a chronic ankle pain or whatever the case is, or knee pain or back pain, it's there for you. And like I said, don't lie. You don't need to lie about what you're going through. You just need to explain to the doctors what you're going through, and then you can use other people out there to help you file that claim with the VA to get those benefits. And they're all trained professionals to evaluate your claim and evaluate whether it is related to your service, and if it's a percentage based, injury, like if you deserve compensation for it. So yeah, go through your medical record and file for what you have, and you deserve it. I mean, it's compensation. You serve our country, you deployed, and or even if you didn't deploy, I mean, you could have gotten injured in basic training and then gotten chaptered out, but you still deserve veteran benefits because you got injured while serving. It's not your fault you got injured in basic training, or afterwards. It doesn't matter. Use the benefits. They're there. Don't abuse them, but use them.
You said the DAV wanted you to claim some things that maybe weren't, a little exaggeration, let's say, of what actually happened. Did you have any problems dealing with the VA directly when you were doing this? I mean, if they evaluate something that you thought they should have, were they agreeable that this is an issue that was caused by your service?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Going back to that aspect. Yeah, I mean, at the time they filed for, they were filing stuff on like my ankle and stuff, and I don't have anything in my medical record for my ankle. And so like, that's kind of where I just wasn't in agreement with, was I just don't have anything there, and I don't have even a current injury there. So why was he adding it on there? And that guy was just kind of a bad representation. And it just kind of threw me into a way that not to go with the DAV. I'm not saying not to, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the DAV that are good. Use the free resources that are out there. DAV, VFW, all these are great resources that have people in there that will help you. But again, if you truly feel that they're trying to not represent you correctly, don't go through with it. Like you can always change it how you see it, and they should listen to you, because it could come back to bite you. In my case, what happens is they evaluate you, say, okay, well, you were claiming an ankle injury. Okay, well, you don't have anything in your record about an ankle injury. So we're going to assess it, evaluate it, and then you have to figure out how to link it. Well, in my case, I was just like, well, just drop the ankle thing, because that was, that's not something that I am currently going through with. And because I want to be truthful, I don't want to lie. And so it was just dropped, and it's still on my record today, showing that I was denied for an ankle thing because I don't have any way to link it, let alone have any documentation for it. So it's on my record showing that it was originally filed for, but it was denied. So everything you file for will stay on your record and be, it'll be there. And you can file one time and get 100%, or you can file 100 times and get 100%. Like, it wasn't like I'm at 100% P&T now, but it took me 10 years to get there, and through, chronic injuries through my back, my neck. And I also have a rare autoimmune disorder that's linked to the burn pits, which almost killed me because I had a blood clot in my portal vein. And that was a few years ago, and that was not fun. And that pretty much ended a lot of things. That's kind of when I stopped really streaming altogether, because I just couldn't. I've been so fatigued since that point. It's been hard to do day-to-day things. So just because you're awarded 30% now, or whatever the case is, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to increase it down the road. Because you might only be 30% now because that's what you're rated at and evaluated at, and that's what you should be at. And then in a couple years down the road, you might have re-aggravated one of your back, or your back might get worse, or your knees might get worse. So you get a higher rating. And it's confusing, because if, like, for instance, I filed for something that was probably the hardest thing for me to file for, which was PTSD. It's not hard to claim that you have PTSD, but for me as a person, it's hard to admit that I have PTSD. And that's probably the hardest point that I ever had in any of my filing process was admitting to myself that I do have a disability, that I do have constant pain that I deal with, that I do have these issues. And that's the hardest point to get past. If you can get past that, everything else, in my opinion, it comes smoothly until you get into the part where you go through the evaluations. And that then stirs up all of the stuff again. And it makes it's stressful. Because a lot of the VA changed how you get evaluated. And it used to be that you'd be evaluated through somebody at the VA, or you could pay for somebody, a doctor, to evaluate you third party. And I even went through that third party process of paying a doctor, a private doctor, to evaluate me because I was tired of having doctors through the VA that just didn't seem to care. They didn't want to listen, what have you. And that was a mistake because then the VA changed during that process. They changed the rules and now they only do third party evaluations. And so basically the money I paid to get evaluated by a doctor was basically denied and a waste. So don't ever spend money to get any kind of person to help you. You don't need it. You don't need it. There's plenty of resources, the VFW, DAV, even at your local VA healthcare facility should be a representative to help you file the claim if you need it. There's plenty of documentation online that you can kind of research. And, some of the things that people don't take in consideration of is you might have pain in your, for instance, for me, pain in my neck. I have pain in my neck that shoots down my arm, and it makes my hand go numb. And so that pain in your neck is radiopathy going down your arm is another radi. And that's where you have your primary issue is your neck. And then you have a secondary because of your neck. It radiates down your arm. That's now a secondary condition. And so you can basically use that to give yourself additional, a higher rating, by doing so, by stacking. I don't know if that's the best word for it, because I do have these issues, but one's related to the other, I guess is what I'm saying. So the pain in my arm wouldn't be there if it wasn't for my neck. But it's there and it's a secondary issue. Okay. I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Do you know if there's any widespread misconceptions about the VA benefits? Like have you heard anything that people will say this, but you've kind of experienced differently?
I don't know if I have an example. Do you have a specific one that you might have a misconception of yourself or?
Not of myself, but so people will go and say, well, I don't want to, it takes too long. You're sitting waiting for hours, hurry up and wait kind of a thing to be seen by somebody.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. So that's a good point. I've had great doctors at the VA and I've had terrible doctors at the VA. It's just like anywhere else you go. You're going to have a good experience and you're going to have a bad experience. You might have a great experience and then you might have a completely terrible experience. And it really depends on where you're going, what state you're in, what VA facility you're in. When I started, I was in North Carolina out of the Asheville VA hospital there. And I didn't have a very positive experience. The doctor that I got, I didn't really like at the very beginning. Eventually he retired and I got a new younger doctor. He was super, super good. And he's the one who brought me back into thinking that the VA was actually caring for their veterans. So don't get discouraged if you get a bad doctor. You have the right to request a new primary care doctor. And if you don't like your primary care doctor through the VA, in many cases, you can go to a different VA facility. I drive all the way up to Seattle, which is a hour commute one way, hour and a half during traffic, or maybe even 2. I have a local office 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road, but they don't have as much stuff there. And the care that I need, based on my autoimmune disorder that I have, I prefer to go to the Seattle hospital because there's a lot of times I have to do a lot of blood tests and all this stuff. And if I do it here at the local facility, it could be a week before that blood test is read. And a lot of the times it's just not, it's not like I want it read right away.
Right.
And that's the thing too, is if you are rated through the VA and you get compensation, they also pay for your travel to the doctor as long as you're going for a related injury. So anytime I drive up to Seattle for that doctor, it automatically now, when I check into my appointment, it used to be you'd have to file separately and you'd have to go through the travel office and file a travel pay form and stuff like that. But they've reinvented the system, at least out here. And so anytime I go up there, I check in for my appointment on my phone and it says, are you trying to claim travel for this appointment? And then I just hit yes. And then it opens up a browser link and then it does everything for me. And then it says, okay, you're done. And it will take your home address, the address that you're at, and then it will calculate the rate, the government rate of travel distance by car and all that stuff. And you can add stuff if you have tolls and stuff like that on the road and stuff like that too. So it's really robust on what they're doing to the system. I really do think they are making a lot of improvements at the VA. I really do. But yeah, I mean, the misconception of, oh, it's going to take 45 days for appointment, 90 days. Yes. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There are times that there are 90-day waits, but they have community care options now. So if you need to get, physical therapy and there's no physical therapy appointments, they'll let you do community care. And I did that for a year and a half, 5 minutes down the road through a local physical therapy place. And it's, you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. It's all done through the VA. It does take time to do community care. Usually your doctor will schedule it and it could take 3 to 6 weeks before you get an appointment. But once you get through the community care network the first time, it's smooth sailing generally for continued use.
What would be some of your top tips or suggestions for navigating the VA system to be effective with it?
My top number one tip is if you're trying to get an appointment, don't wait to call. Like, this is another reason why I go to the Seattle Center is if I get a referral to go to dental or to the cardiologist or to a specialty doctor, don't go back home and have them call you. Yes, they will, but it will take 2 to 3 weeks. There's been times where I get referred to, here's a story. Like, I got referred to get an MRI done on my neck, and my doctor was like, oh, it's going to be 90 days before you get an appointment. You probably won't even hear back from them for 2 to 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, well, I'm already here. I'm just going to walk to the MRI place and, talk to the front desk. And I talked to the front desk and they're like, yeah, it's 90 days for an appointment. And somebody had missed their MRI appointment and they were being called and they weren't even there. So the doctor right then and there was like, hey, you need an MRI? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay, well, just come on in here. We'll get you right now. So I literally walked from my doctor's appointment into the MRI section and got an MRI done that same day because somebody else didn't cancel their appointment and didn't show. So you could get lucky like I did in that case. And instead of having to wait 90 days, that's why I always say to everybody, don't wait for them to call you. You call them or you show up in front of their desk because then they will take care of you. You'll get your first appointment. Ask for if anybody's canceled an appointment today, because usually if somebody's canceled an appointment, they haven't gone through the system yet to actually physically cancel it. They probably have a note down on the piece of paper right next to them. And, it's not available right now in the system, but now they can go in physically, cancel that appointment right then and there, and then add you to that spot. So that's my number one trick I can give any veteran is if you're going to a bigger VA facility and they're referring you to get care through another section of the VA outside of primary care or even in primary care, just go in person and ask for an appointment. It's worth it because you don't have to spend 3 hours on hold and you don't have to, wait for them to get back to you.
Nice. Definitely good advice to have there. So I guess, since all veterans need support in one way or another. So besides the VA, what other resources or support networks might you recommend for veterans?
I mean, it just depends. I mean, you got the DAV, you have the VFW. There's a lot of VFWs in my area and different posts all around. Personally, I haven't really utilized them myself. I've heard good things about them, but I'm not necessarily a social butterfly when it comes to meeting in person. I prefer the online side of things. So, there's all kinds of Discord groups out there that have, we joined one, Combat Tested Gaming, recently for Rocket League. And so they have support stuff in there. Regiment is probably the number one online gaming organization for veterans. And they have a whole Discord server and a huge community there. And so if you're looking for, people for gaming, that's kind of how I am. I'm that kind of person. I look for the online groups and, meet other people that have the same interests. You go into a VFW, I don't think I'm going to run into people who want to play, Apex Legends, Rocket League and stuff like that. I think, it's going to be the old school mentality. You're going to play poker and, play cards and stuff like that. I mean, everybody has their own thing.
Right.
So what advice do you think you would give to veterans who are just starting out to explore their VA benefits? Where should they start? Obviously this depends on their issues, if they have more medical issues or mental issues, or just want to know how to use their benefits. What kind of advice do you think you have for people just starting out, in the VA?
Yeah, so on the Veterans Affairs website, they have pretty much everything listed that you could possibly have for different benefits that you can be eligible for. The number one thing I give to anybody is if you are going to file for disability compensation pay or whatever the case is, make sure you file the intent to file. There's an intent to file form. You file it, and then you can start gathering all your information. Because that date, the moment you file your intent to file, is the moment they'll backdate everything to. So, and that intent to file is good for a whole year. So if it takes 9 months to gather all of your medical records from the VA or the Army or Air Force, Navy, whatever the case is, get all your records together, or all your doctors, it's not a big deal, because you'll get that back pay all the way to the date that you originally had that intent to file in. And that's what it's there for, is say, hey, I have an issue with my back. I want to file for compensation for it. And you just do an intent to file, and then you gather all your evidence, you gather all the stuff that you need, and then you submit it down the road. So the intent to file is number one. Number two is get involved into the VA center, get your VA card, and, get a primary care provider through the VA, even if you have private insurance. As long as you're being seen through the VA, because it's a benefit that you get, especially if you are. I think it's free for anybody that has any compensation, and I'm not 100% sure if you don't have compensation, but it's still low copays. But if you have private insurance anyway, it gets negated, because they'll file the claim to your insurance, and it'll go towards your copay, it'll go towards your all your other stuff too, and you're generally not having to pay for it through your regular doctor anyway. You're now going through the VA and building up on that. So it's still a good resource to have. And then all of your evidence and stuff like that's there, especially if you're looking to file for a claim. Even if you haven't filed for a claim and you've been out for 10, 15 years and you don't think you have a claim, let the VA say that you don't. I had a friend that got out, and she was out for 10 years, and she's like, I don't think I have any right for a claim. I don't feel like I have all that stuff. Well, like I looked over her, record and was like, well, you do because you have these issues and you have that issue. And then it's something that you're living with and you're suffering with, but you're not like, let them say that, no, this isn't a thing. Well, she ended up getting 90% on her first claim because it was all related to military. And it's stuff that she's going through with on a constant basis. And so like, Chris, you used to jump out of airplanes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I bet your knees are a little shot there, huh?
Yeah, a little is being very kind.
Yeah. So I challenge you to get your stuff together and let the VA choose whether or not you deserve it. And, at 30% VA rates, it's like $300 or $400 a month. It's not life-changing money, but it's a car payment. It's extra payment, I looked at it as, hey, that's my money that I get to spend to make my life a little bit better here and there. Do it. If they say no, you're in the same boat you are right now. That's what my grandfather taught me, that is, you always ask. It never hurts to ask the question, right? Can I get this? No? Well, you're in the same boat. Ask the question.
It's good advice for us stubborn military folks, because that's one of the biggest things is you get out of the military, you're expected to be all, rough and strong and nothing's wrong with me. And that's, just getting kind of over your own head is another thing that I would, give to anybody who's, getting out of the military, no matter what they do, is just get over yourself and, do things.
And my last thing, well, I shouldn't say the last thing, but another important thing is when you do go through the filing process, make sure you have a family member or a friend close, because there are going to be those times where you run into a terrible evaluator. They just don't care. They're going to ask hard questions. Whether it's you're going in for your knee, you're going in for your back, it's going to be rough because they're going to bend your knee in weird positions, and it's going to hurt. And you're not going to be coming out of there feeling very happy that somebody just bent your knee in a way that causes you pain. Or you're talking, if it's a PTSD side or mental side of things, depression, any of those kind of things, talking about that kind of stuff isn't easy, especially to a stranger, especially to somebody who, it's one thing to talk to a mental health professional on a regular basis that is your provider, your mental health provider, constantly, your counselor, however you want to see it, that you see on a regular basis, once a week, once a month, whatever the case is. That's one thing. But when you go into these evaluators, you're talking to this evaluator for, 1 to 4 hours, depending on how long it takes. And they're looking for very specific things. So that's another thing is like when you go to get evaluated on your thing, it's almost like a test. I'm not saying to lie about things, but be prepared, because they're looking for very specific things on what you're saying. For instance, be prepared to answer, like if it's your knee, for instance, how long does it, how often does it hurt, what the pain level is on a regular basis, on a flare up, what the pain level is, and how often do you get the flare ups? How often are you in the pain? How does it affect your daily life? How does it affect your professional life? Have all of that information in the back of your mind, or even if you want to bring notes on it. Because sometimes, like when I go into a doctor's thing, it's like I'm sitting here like, hey, how's it going? I'm good. I don't want to talk about stuff. My wife's sitting here like, you're not good. Don't lie. Like she's smacking me like, dude. And it's like, it's just who I am. I was just trained, drink water, change your socks, and you'll be all right. It's the same aspect, but go in there prepared, have that information for everything that you're claiming about, whether it's mental health, whether it's your toe being, whatever the case is, it does like have the information, how it affects you, the who, what, when, where, why, how of every single thing. Because if you have that, that's going to help benefit your case. Having buddy statements or lay statements, they can help too. That could be from your significant other, that can be from a friend, a family member. And that could just be explaining what you're going through on a daily basis, whether it's for PTSD or, you're going through night terrors, or you're going through, you have flare-ups constantly, headaches, migraines, stuff like that, just to help support what you're saying. Because in the end, it's, what you're saying versus what the evidence shows. And if you don't have a whole lot of evidence to show, sometimes those lay statements will be the icing on the cake that helps get what you deserve.
Sounds like it would be a good idea to document over time if you're thinking about going in and you have various things that happen, to document when and your pain levels as you go, if you happen to have the inclination to do so.
Yeah, that's one of the things that one of my mental health providers told me at one point to do, was to have a health journal. And when you woke up, did you have a nightmare? Did you have this? Did you have what's your pain at? And then fill it out in the morning, and then fill it out in the evening, that kind of stuff. Having that kind of journal will help significantly. But the number one thing is really going into the VA or going into a doctor and getting evaluated for your pain. So if you have issues with your knees, go in and get them looked at, and go do physical therapy, because they're going to look at what you've done to try and get better as well, and if it has helped or hasn't helped. I went through 2.5 years of physical therapy between my back, my neck, and my knees. And it's, a constant thing, but it's chronic pain, and it's not going away. I've gotten stronger. I've, from when I first tore my meniscus in my knee, it's gotten stronger, but it's still in pain. So it's one of those things that you just have to consistently document, and over time, it'll help your claim down the road.
That covers kind of all the questions that I had.
All right. Well, I will, along with this podcast, I will put down some notes about some of the things that were mentioned, like how to get to some Discord groups, for instance, or other online resources that might be related to what we've discussed. So I'll have those along with the podcast. Anything else you want to follow up with before we end this?
The biggest thing out there is, if you are a disabled veteran and you're getting VA compensation pay, make sure you pay attention to what percentage you're at and what benefits you can get. Washington State, where I'm at, offers free camping for veterans that are disabled. And I think it's only like 30% or something like that needed in order to get the free camping. And that includes if you have full hookups or not. There's, even if you're not fully disabled, there's VA benefits like the home loan, and, all the other ones that are out there. You don't have to be disabled to get VA benefits. There's tons and tons and tons out there that are non-disabled ones too. Just kind of look at the VA website and see what's there. I mean, it has everything there that you can possibly need for all the benefits.
Yeah, I know for myself, I don't have any disability that I've ever thought to claim, but I do take advantage of certain benefits, like even Home Depot and Lowe's will give you 10% off of all your purchases. There's those kind of things. You can get a lifetime pass to the National Park Service as a veteran, and so you don't pay, you just get the pass, and it's good for a lifetime. So that's, another kind of benefit you can get. You can go to all the national parks and not have to pay to get in.
That's a huge benefit. It's a good one. I have that one too. Yep.
All right. Any last words, Chris?
No, nothing for me. Just want to thank James for hanging out with us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're quite welcome. We're glad to have you. And you're welcome to come back another time for other discussions if you care to.
Any subjects, or if you know anybody else who might want to join and, talk about something or some kind of subject. We're more than happy to bring anybody on that wants to have a good discussion to give information to any veterans out there.
Indeed.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Right. Well, we thank you for being on, and thanks, Chris. And we thank anyone watching, listening for your time, and appreciate the chance that we can be here for you.
Yep. We'll catch you all on the next one.
All right.